Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Doing great today, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. Excited to chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you making time for me in the audience today. I was looking at your bio, your background, Jeff, and I noticed that you was it what 16 years with the Coca-Cola Company?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, that's I mean, first off, it's super impressive just the longevity of that span, but I got a taste of big brand experience from the marketing perspective, and I got to tell you, it was insane working for AT&T for a year. Like, there's so much brand presence that you're kind of everywhere and you're juggling a lot of things. So, how did you, I mean, working in the marketing side for Coca-Cola Company, like what was your experience, in that craziness, and kind of how has it informed where you're at today as CMO of Ayr Wellness?
Oh yeah, that experience was invaluable. And I spent a lot of time in customer leadership roles or market development roles, as well as the opportunity to work from a marketing perspective. Thinking about consumers and customers. I think back to just some of the things I learned is right out of school, starting out. I talk to a lot of people who have MBAs, or they're younger in their career, and they're asking, do I need to leave what I'm doing now to go get another degree and come back in order to get into marketing? A lot of organizations look for folks that have that kind of school background. And for me, it really depends on where you are, and then how you're accessing and learning information and taking advantage of that. So I tell people I spent 16 years getting a PhD in brands from Coca-Cola University. I mean, it was amazing. Literally from the first day I walked into headquarters and talking to someone who'd been there for 35 years, and really just started creating perspective on this has been around since 1886, and you, Jeff, when you wake up every day, will either polish or tarnish the trademark.
Wow.
And Coca-Cola, right? Everything you do is going to have an effect either one way or the other, right?
Right, right.
And that's a big responsibility when you're talking about likely one of the most iconic brands in the history of commerce, right?
Of human history, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I'd have to brush up. It's been some time since I was there, but there was a time. One of the interesting things in our fact book was that Coca-Cola was the second most recognized word in the world.
Wow.
Care to guess what the first one was?
Not Pepsi.
No, not that. It's the word okay, which cuts it. So when you think about okay,
super simple, right? Like that's translated universally, right? And then Coca-Cola, right there at number 2. Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? So I mean, my gosh, if you think about wanting to learn how to build a brand, right? I mean, you can't achieve a level of brand recognition, unaided brand recognition, that's at the par of the word okay. So yeah, so I mean, my experience at Coke was amazing. I was part of not only the idea of continuing to grow and build and evolve and keep relevant, a trademark like Coca-Cola, the core brand, but I was part of launching some incredible brands, and also part of some spectacular failures, which people give Coke. There's not 100% hit rate. I mean, I can recall some really exciting disasters.
Well, that's marketing, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's the world of marketing. You fail, but you fail fast. You move on, if something doesn't work.
Yeah, and hopefully it informs the next big thing. I mean, to me, in the early 2000s, Coke launched, I think I placed this product myself in several markets, right? I don't know if you're familiar, you remember Coca-Cola C2. But
I vaguely remember that. Yes.
A big $50 million brand campaign. I think we licensed the Rolling Stones for the soundtrack for it and rolled it out everywhere, painted the sides of the trucks. And the whole premise on that was, people are starting to think about healthier but they didn't want to drink Diet Coke because they didn't like the taste and they didn't like the brand affinity. And so they wanted something that tasted like Coke but had less calories, right? So they created Coca-Cola C2, which was literally half Diet Coke, half Coke. So
just half and half, one to one. Yeah.
so it wasn't 0 calories, it was like 80 calories. So
Right.
okay, but it still tasted with the aftertaste of a non-sugar
Right.
sweet, right? So it was a
Yeah.
spectacular failure. But everything, in 9 months that was gone. But shortly thereafter was the launch and the release of Coke Zero, right? Kind of like, okay, we actually need to create something with 0 calories, but tastes better and is branded and created to the non-Diet Coke, right? Mom drinks Diet Coke, right?
Right.
Coke
Right.
Zero in that black can with the red splash, like that's, I'm a 25-year-old guy. I can drink Coke Zero and care about my calories. It tastes better, and that
Right.
became $1 billion brand in less than a year, right? So that's
Wow.
yeah, there's learning from consumer food. You try as much as you can on the front end, right, to make good solid bets based on consumer insights. But the real meat of the insight doesn't come until you're actually out in people's hands. So
Right.
that was definitely one of the many lessons that I've learned over time.
Yeah. I mean, I can't agree more with what you said earlier in terms of like, I don't know if you phrase it this way, but taking advantage of like the current environment that you're in, right? And like doing things with a purpose. I mean, you were there for 16 years. You got your degree from the Coca-Cola Company, as you mentioned, because there was that opportunity there and you seized it. And so I look forward to hearing more and learning more about your current role again as CMO at Ayr Wellness. But one more thing I want to ask you before we dive into the actual business and the marketing operations that you lead is your start to cannabis. It's a truly touching story. I heard it, you talking about it on another podcast, and I think it's worth you sharing. I mean, what sparked your initial interest in getting into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, no, it was something. I mean, spending 16 years at Coke and then having a really exciting and interesting run working with Firehouse Subs, a big growing, food service brand. I wasn't, I never really thought about cannabis as a career, and I got a call one day from a guy I started with actually on the same day at Coca-Cola in 1998. And this is back in early 2019, who was leaving Coke for the first time after 20 years. And he's like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to run this company down in Florida, and I'd really love. I thought about one person, I want to bring you in to run marketing and sales. And I said, okay, what is it? Right. And he actually wouldn't tell me what it was. He goes, I'm going to send you a link. All right. Because if I just say it, you're going to have a certain reaction to it. I'm going to send you a link. I want you to check it out, think about it, and then give me a call back. Right. So he sends me a link, and it's Ianthus is the parent company, but the organization he was going to run and build was Grow Healthy, which is Florida-based vertical cannabis operator. And my first thought was, what, you got to be kidding me. You're leaving. He was running all of food service for Coca-Cola in Canada. Was going to go run a cannabis operation in Florida. So I thought about it. I talked to him a little bit. Florida's a medical only state, though, that's got over 600,000 cardholder patients, and I thought about something close to home, which was my younger sister has suffered for many years from fibromyalgia, and for a number of years, she wasn't able to hold a job, for a steady period of time. She was on disability. She was withdrawn from family activities, my kids' lives, and then in the state of Connecticut, she got a medical card on the advice of one of her medical providers, and it had this unbelievable impact on her life, which within a
Wow.
couple of months, all of a sudden she was present at Thanksgiving and at kids' birthday parties, and within a few months of that, she got full-time work doing environmental cleanup in the New Haven harbor. I can't think of them. I've never had a physically demanding job to that level.
Right.
And here's someone who has unable to hold office work jobs for years because of the pain associated, the physical pain associated with fibromyalgia. And, medical cannabis literally turned her life around. And so as I thought about this discussion with my friend, and the ability to, impact lives in that way, it became more and more interesting. And then I went down and visited him and some of the retail locations and talked to some of the employees that went out to the grow, kind of looked at the operation, and, it really, fascinated me. And I think a lot about data and using that to map consumer behavior, really understand how consumers behave.
Mhm.
And we were talking about all of the information you have to gather to report back to the state of Florida, right? It's required. Every time someone buys something, you report that. And, I said, well, what do you do with all this? This is gosh, if Target and Walmart had this kind of, data about themselves and their consumers' behavior at their competitors' outlets, it's a game changer. And, the answer is, well, no one does anything with it yet, right? It's all white space. And so, from a career standpoint, just from an intellectual curiosity standpoint, on, there's no playbook. I mean, you go to Coke, you hope you're not tarnishing
Right.
100+ years worth of amazing success.
Right.
Here you have the opportunity to be a trailblazer, right?
Well, operations that you want to propose within Coke probably wouldn't be like, they have their way of doing it. It's a well-oiled machine. So to your point, this is a whole new opportunity that you can kind of craft from a blank canvas.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. The blank canvas was, from a professional standpoint, the really exciting part of it. To think about this burgeoning, group of consumers, which are growing, day by day. It's more and more people are coming in, not just talking about in the medical market, adult markets, the access to it, but also the understanding of it and the perceptions of it are all changing. And to be a part of that, it was really exciting. And, coupled with the opportunity to actually make a difference with people like my sister. And I, one of the first things I got the opportunity to do when I got down to Florida, there's 2,600 physicians that can write, certifications for a card in Florida. And I went around and I met with like 50 of them and just asked about, what do your patients need? Like, I kind of thinking about this as a continuum of care, right? If you're a physician and you write a prescription and they go to Walgreens or CVS, like, you don't care where they go because they're going to give them exactly what you wrote on the prescription pad. If a patient goes to see a certified medical marijuana physician in the state of Florida, they're going to tell you, I think you should start out with a ratioed product and you should use this route of administration. But once they leave and they walk into a dispensary in the state of Florida, they're not going to
get whatever they want.
They get whatever they want, and they can get talked into whatever they want, right?
Right.
And so really establishing that trust and the handoff, I wanted to understand from their perspective, what are the things they need. And one of the things that I heard, 7% of the folks that hold a medical card in the state of Florida are cancer patients. And RSO oil is something that has absolutely positively impacted scores and scores of patients, right? And it's more than scores, a large portion of that population. And there was a shortage. There were only 2 people that were making that from a cannabis operator standpoint, and it was inconsistent on how often you could get it. And several doctors told me they encouraged their patients to legally source it from Canada, right? So we said that was the first product development initiative had at Grow Healthy, was to put RSO out in the marketplace and then follow up on it. It was, actually, let's do it strain specific, which no one else was doing. So if somebody finds a version of it that works, that they can consistently get that to continue to have a positive impact. And I had a voicemail. At some point it changed, phone accounts, but I had it saved for like a year, where I got a voicemail from a woman who was just literally calling to thank me for saving her life, and that she wanted me to talk to her oncologist because the impact on her cell counts and everything else, and she had started using the strain specific birds of paradise RSO, had just, I mean, can just absolutely changed her medical outlook and her ability to live and enjoy life on a daily basis. So
Amazing.
I played that on a town hall, and just, thanking everyone who were in our stores, and being that continuum of care from the physician all the way through to help the patient, that every day they're impacting. And if you can't have pride in that and wake up and feel excited about what you do, you're not, you gotta check your pulse,
Right.
Um,
So at what point did you make the move to Ayr Wellness? I mean, at that point, I can see within your journey, I mean, the light bulb moment came on. And I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I had an opportunity to have started conversations with some of the leadership at Ayr in February of 2021, and ultimately having conversations with John Sandelman, who's our founder and our CEO. And
John's been on the podcast. He's a really great guy to talk to. Super interesting and
yes,
highly intellectual individual.
yeah,
If those are listening or watching haven't heard it, I recommend checking it out. It's a good episode.
absolutely. John he's fascinating. He's brilliant. He's engaging. And so, as you might imagine, when you start having conversations with him about where his vision for what Ayr Wellness could and should be, and the growth trajectory, and how I could help build the business, it was a pretty easy decision to say, I mean, there was John is a brilliant operator, and as financial background, and built the company through some acquisitions focused on high quality operations that are consistent, manageable, financial discipline. But to the point when we were having a conversation, the next level was going to be brands, customer marketing. There was one person in the marketing organization at Ayr when I joined the company, right? So it was a kind of a question of, John, do you want to hire me to run your marketing organization, or build it, right? But again, it was another blank canvas opportunity on a much larger scale. And some of the things that John's vision is about high quality cannabis products at scale, right? So consistency and transparency and trust and safety, right? We're talking about agricultural product that, whether it's a medical or recreational market, it matters. You're putting it into your body. And you have to trust it. And if quality is not the linchpin of everything you do, then it doesn't matter what kind of pretty pictures you create, what kind of box you put it in, or what kind of messaging you put behind it. It's a house of cards. Mm-hmm. And John will say it. I'll tell you, may have said it on your podcast. It's not the box. It's what's inside the box, right? And that is a core brand pillar for Ayr. It's what's inside the box, and that when you're committed to creating the highest quality products at scale that are safe, trustworthy, then when you start to build brand platforms around them, they mean something, and you can trust them, and we can build relationships with customers, right? I mean, one of the things I learned when I was at Coke is that there are countries in the world where people will drink Coke because they trust it to be safer than water. Think about that.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I get it because it's the marketing and the branding of the product, right? I mean, that's what really drives that message home of that trust and that brand affinity.
Right. Yeah, but it's built upon a trust that quality is at the core of what we do, right? And so,
right.
John's our mission is built around becoming the largest producer of high quality cannabis products at scale, right? Plenty of people create great products. They can do it from a craft cannabis standpoint. They can do it with a small canopy. But when you're talking about doing it over dozens of facilities in multiple states, with 1 million square feet, right, and still have that same commitment to the highest level of quality versus just scale. That's important. And then coupled with that mission is a vision to be a force for good in everything we do and to have a lasting positive impact in every community in which we operate. So to me, I mean, you marry those two things together, and we try to create retail brands and product brands that all weave through that same connective tissue of the mission and the vision. And it's really exciting. And I think over time we can create a lasting legacy that can stand the test of time and really stand upon those pillars. And so that was the exciting, attractive opportunity to come work at Ayr.
Oh, I can definitely see the value proposition there, right? And let's dive into Ayr and its carefully crafted brand portfolio, right? I understand that within that brand portfolio, there is a wide range of consumers that, from your perspective, you're marketing to, right? And you mentioned the term building these brand platforms. So talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges and maybe some of the opportunities that Ayr sees as it relates to their brand portfolio and reaching specific customer bases.
Yeah, no, I think that was, one of the first things to tackle was to understand, through these acquisitions, right? We had like 75 or 80 different product brands, I'll call them, right? Where they're really just logos and stickers, right? Without fully deformed brands. And so what as you're integrating all these businesses, what does the brand portfolio look like? There are some in this industry that have 2 or 3 brands, and same brand represents flower and pre-rolls and vape carts and topicals across the way. And to me, that approach is suggesting that there's a cannabis consumer or a couple of different types of cannabis consumers, right? And I mean, that's just not true. I mean, that's one of the first things we did was try to really understand, before you dive in, what brand should we build, or what do we keep, or what do we got to create, is what does the architecture look like? And the architecture is completely dependent on who's the audience, who are we talking to, right? And are we talking to one person? I mean, our retail brand certainly needs to talk to someone, but we want to build a portfolio that if you interact with our portfolio of brands or our retail brand, that we have the opportunity to meet every cannabis consumer wherever they are on their journey. And that journey is very different for different groups of people. And there's one BDS data point that I love, and I got to remind people about when we start talking about this consumer or that consumer, the group, is when you say, well, who is the cannabis consumer? That's December,
a loaded question.
It's a really loaded question. It is a really loaded question, right? Because everyone's got something in their mind, right? If you ask them to draw a picture, you get some interesting responses. But last December, BDS published a study that showed that if you took every state, I think it's 38 states, that has some form of a cannabis program in it, right? So that's medical and rec or adult use. And you looked at the entire population across those 38 states that's 21 and over, that 73% of those people are either existing legal cannabis consumers or interested or likely to try.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Well, that's huge, right?
I think more people smoke than we think.
Yes. Well, they certainly do. More people than I thought, right? So that broke down at that time. It was 30% of adults 21 and over in all 38 states were interested or willing to try legal cannabis, and 43% had purchased legal cannabis in the last 6 months. 43% of all adults in 38. This is not huge. Like it's not like oh in San Francisco that makes sense, or this is 38 states across the country. That is, so the consumer today at 43% of that population is everybody. And oh by the way, there's another 30% that are interested or willing to. And I went back in May and saw another presentation from the CEO of BDS. They had updated that same study. And it was still 73% in those states were either interested in or had purchased, except now 46% had purchased in the last 6 months and 27% were interested, meaning that the 3% of the 30 had 10% of all those people in 6 months had came into the cannabis industry.
Wow.
And so the idea that we're going to talk to people that are this age from here to here and have these likes, it's everybody. It's literally everybody. And so when you think about a brand portfolio, you've got to think about where they are in their spectrum. Are they new to cannabis? Have they been doing this for a long time? Are they hardcore concentrate consumers? Are they what are the brands that resonate with someone who says, yes, I'm interested in cannabis, but I don't really know yet, how do I dip my, is that a Levia seltzer, which seems a lot like a White Claw? Yeah. I get it. It's low dose. I can have some. I can still interact. It's just I have it in my hand at a party or a gathering, right? So we wanted to create brands that clearly address the 43 and 46% of people that already are buying it. Although even those break down as like, I just started, or I know flower because flower is familiar, but boy, live resin sounds interesting, or edibles sound interesting, right? And there are ways for us to take people on a brand journey within a product category or across product categories. And then how do we talk to folks who are that 27% that are interested, but just don't know what's right or who to talk to or what really appeals to them. And so that's the intention behind developing a portfolio with 11 national brands that cut across form factors, that rise across an axis of value to premium from a pricing standpoint, that really address consumers from an entry into cannabis to an expert in cannabis. So the way we talk to them is different. If you're somebody who really understands terpenes and profiles of terpenes, we're going to talk to you very differently than someone who's literally like, I get cannabis, I know a little bit about it, I'm interested in it. You're not going to immediately run into, well, our live resin has 20% terpene. That means, right? It's not the conversation. You might have a Secret Orchard vape. This tastes like watermelon, but it's going to give you this effect. Oh, okay, I get that. Let me try that.
Right.
So that's kind of the approach. There was a lot more data and science to it than maybe the storytelling, but it's pretty exciting to be where we are now, which is actually activating this entire brand portfolio across 8 states.
Yeah, no, it's super helpful. And you're speaking my language when you talk about brand journey and, all this kind of stuff. Cause I live in the marketing world also, being a decade in it in the social media side of the house. But I want to pry a little deeper and talk about, okay, so it makes complete sense about how you need to first understand your audience. And then once you understand who you're kind of going after, you can kind of build out, maybe the content or the assets or what have you, or the messaging to approach them and then bring them along that brand journey that you talked about. But how do you approach 2 different consumer bases as it relates to like the adult use market and the medical side?
Well, I think that they both start from the same place, right? So I think if you're thinking about the adult use customer as someone with a completely separate set of needs than the medical customer or patient, I think you're coming at it wrong, right? Because like I said earlier, I like to ground myself in the fact that whatever the purpose that you're using the product for, if we can all align it's an agricultural product that you're going to put into your body for some effect, right? That could be symptom relief. It could be to enhance an enjoyable experience from a social standpoint. But if those 3 things are true for everybody, then again, it comes back to quality, trust, transparency, science, and safety, right? So if you start with a base, a foundation of that, and then you build from there and you understand need, state, and use case, some of them cross over, right? I may not be a medical patient, but in an adult use recreational market, I enjoy this form of recreation more than alcohol or something else, because this actually helps me with depression or anxiety, or or just relief in general,
Right.
right?
Right.
Versus specific relief, that is tied to a diagnosed medical condition, right? There are certainly, the way that we would talk about RSO to a cancer patient is different than another oil-based product for somebody who's in the recreational market. But again, I think the connective tissue is that agricultural product, I'm going to put it in my body, and I'm desiring it to make some kind of effect or impact on my body and my mind, right? And that's a common thread in everything we do. And to me, when you're building brands, again, another thing that I learned from Coca-Cola is it's a lot less about sometimes it's less about even the product that's in the box, as it is to the emotive connection that you have with a brand. And the example I would use there is the story of New Coke, right? Which I don't know if you maybe a little younger than I am, but in the early '80s, Pepsi did a great job of doing the great Pepsi challenge, which was they did the commercials. They would run at grocery stores and events, and they would have you take a small sip of two things and pick which one you like better.
I remember
Right?
that. Yeah. That was a great campaign. Yeah.
And people would pick Pepsi.
Coke. Oh, yeah,
Now, we can debate on whether or not the Pepsi was cold and the Coke was warm, or flat.
Or they spit in it or something, whatever.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but maybe this one just was out of the ice a little longer. I don't know, but
right.
But the mistake that Coke made was reacting to that, thinking that, boy, the flavor profile, right? Because Coke is it's got more bite to it. It's a little higher carbonation level, and Pepsi's a little sweeter. So scientifically, when it hits your tongue in a small dose, right? Pepsi at first glance, you're going to like that sensation better. It is sweeter, and so I like that better, right? But if you're going to drink a whole can, you're going to have it with food, right? The bite and everything else creates the experience. So they released New Coke. They changed the formula that they had since 1886 to respond to what they thought was actual consumer feedback, right? Well, look, they're telling us they prefer that formulation. So we're going to give the consumer what they want. But they'd spent 100 years developing a brand and a connection with consumers. So when they actually launched it, people were irate.
I bet.
Irate.
Yeah.
They were sending letters. They were
Imagine
boycotting.
if Twitter existed then. Holy shit.
Like, people's phones would explode. But what they found out was the letters that they got weren't, I like the bubbles better, put it back in. It was, how dare you? My memories of Coke are sitting on the edge of the dock, learning to fish with my grandfather and sharing an ice cold glass bottle of Coke. He's no longer with us, and you've destroyed that memory.
Whoa.
Right? That was the kind of feedback that they got. And you're like, wait a second. Okay, so it's not just about the product. Like that brand has evolved to the point that it's about emotion and memory and experience. And if you think about every tagline or campaign that's come since it's enjoy, it's a Coke and a smile, it's all of these things that are around a reaction and an emotion, not this is sweet, this tastes better, this is less filled. It's not. It's about the emotion or the enhancement of the experience. Mm-hmm. And that's a powerful lesson to learn about branding. And so when you think about building brands in cannabis, if you start with the quality and the trust and the transparency and everything else, right? And then you start to think about, great, I've got that covered, right? Now, when we think about who I'm talking to and why are they using it, right? That's the emotive connection, right? That, is Levia guilt-free fun because it's 0 calories and 0 sugar and 0 hangover, right? Okay, so who am I talking to about that? And like I'm connecting the experience versus just the fact that it's a great tasting, completely homogenized THC beverage, right? I think it's the best product in the market, but I think that the story that we can tell and start to build relationships around it is better than the other stories out there. That, hey, look at all these celebrities that love my cannabis beverage.
Right.
What does that mean to me? It doesn't mean anything to me.
No, I agree. And you know, when you talk about like that emotive, like you're appealing to the emotions and you're sparking emotion from the brand product, right? Like what are some of the limitations that you see from your perspective as CMO? Because like from what I've gathered, I mean, and from my experience, even running social media and marketing for clients within the cannabis industry, is that there's a lot of limitations and restrictions when it
Mhm.
comes to what you can do and say, right? And part of that, from my understanding, is the way in which you describe mood or how the product alters your state of being, right? Or like what it can do. So how do you navigate through some of those, you know, blurred lines, kind of pain points, operating with
Yeah.
11 brands? I mean,
Well, look, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to do it on a national level because those kind of changes in regulations and your ability to say what you want to say or even name a brand, what you want to name it, is dependent on the state. And medical states and then certain states within that subset are more and more draconian or not. Right. I mean, we've got a brand Road Tripper, which is about nostalgia, and it's a value flower brand. It's taking you back to, we're actually growing strains for it that are from the 90s and the 2000s, so we can really kind of build a whole promise around it. But we've got multiple states that when we submitted the Road Tripper brand, it was denied as a name. In one state, I don't want to get in trouble with the regulators, but the actual feedback was they thought that people would take that to mean they should be driving around and getting high. I'm taking a road trip somewhere, and that's crazy to me. But okay,
right.
so in those states, we've named the brand Later Days, so it still has this nostalgic idea, and the imagery is very similar. So we've had to change actual brand names for our national brands to satisfy certain states. So I mean, that's at the highest level. Forget about when you get down to some states. If you want to write something on a website and change what the website says, you have to submit it to the Department of Health and wait 30 days for them to come back and say, yes, you can talk about the Tuesday, November 11th promotion. You're like, great, it's December 12th. I appreciate the approval, right? That's not gonna help.
That's so true. Oh man, it's sad, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's okay. Yeah, you've really painted that picture. Like, because I mean, I wonder that, right? Like everyone's going through this right now, regardless if you're a small,
Yeah.
medium size, or large brand. And it's amazing. It's amazing
So
the hurdles.
yeah, the way we approach that, is to think of the idealized state of the brand, right? Build a brand book that's 100 pages with everything in it that we would love to talk about and articulate. And this is in a utopian world where we're treated like every other CPG product in America. This is what we would say, and then we go state by state and tear it down. And sometimes it goes from 100 pages to 2. Sometimes we land at 30, and sometimes we might even make it to 43.
Right.
But when regulations start to ease, right, we've got the rest of the book written, and we can continue to evolve the brand and have those discussions. But I think even within most of the regulations, we were able to talk somewhat about, without a specific, sometimes you can't talk about this will make you feel like this. But we can paint a picture of its impact on your lifestyle or an activity, or there are ways to do that subtly, knowing that if here's what the overt message would be, here's how we do that maybe a little bit more
Got you.
cheek or quieter.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there's operators either listening or watching this episode, and they might be curious about how Ayr generates momentum for its brands. Like, say you launch in a new state or a new market. What are some of the activations that you guys focus on, and how do you keep the momentum rolling after said launch?
It varies by state, and sometimes honestly it's very difficult. I mean, when you think about advertising in general, right? The world's 2 largest advertising platforms are Facebook and Google, and neither of them will take a single nickel from me, right? So we're not welcome there. So we have to find creative ways to activate. And, social media, using our own media channels through social media is one of them, and trying to build that utilization of influencers. And I don't mean, let's go get Jay-Z to talk about us, right? But micro influencers, people that have, decent sized followings, that are advocates and members of the cannabis community in certain geographies, that they have license to say things on social media that we can't, right? So we can do that. We look at event activation is another way that we can get the word out. As we've launched our lit flower brand in multiple states, we've had a lot of influencer events, invite people in to experience it, participated in different cannabis festivals, hosted our own events, to really get people in front of, the lit's really driven around the genetics, the unique genetics that come from a breeder that we partnered with, and to have him present and be able to talk about how we came up with this genetic or this strain, and these kind of West Coast award-winning strains that we were exposing, a lot of our East Coast customers to for the first time. So event activation there is big. We use, digital marketing is another way that we get more and more savvy and finding the right publishers that allow us to do programmatic and geo-targeted and even customer specific digital advertising that feeds people back into our digital properties. Building out our own e-commerce system that's unique to us, that's really optimized for SEO and to deliver a unique, rich, immersive brand and product experience for people that want to order and learn everything at home and then come in and just pick something up, right? So we use that to activate brands. And we're the lines are, the opportunities are broadening more and more. And we launched we opened 2 adult use Ayr locations, the first Ayr locations in Massachusetts, in Boston and Watertown, a few months ago. And we're able to sponsor, the 98.5 FM is the sports radio station in Boston, right? They've got coverage of the Patriots and the Celtics and the Bruins. It's a sports crazy town, but their afternoon drive time guys have a podcast that gets downloaded, 150,000 times a month. And we're the title sponsor of the podcast. So we're not on the radio, but we're on the podcast, and, we've got video ads and we've got, live reads, and, that's a big step forward for us. That's really attacking a very different, way of connecting with consumers there. So, we're constantly trying to figure out what is available to us and what's next. And, heck, I got a call this May from an Indy race car team that was open to the idea of wrapping an Indy car for the Indianapolis 500 in Ayr. Cannabis
Wow.
on national television on NBC. So, I think there's more and more opportunities in front of us. They're not here right now, but they're, every month there's something else to explore. And, to me, it's exciting because that means that we can tell our message and educate more people and change some of the perceptions and stigmas, in the way that we communicate and present our brands and present our company.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everyone. I mean, obviously for Ayr's business to get that exposure, but also, like you said, normalizing the products and just kind of, destigmatizing the plant overall. So that's great to hear. Jeff, as we wrap up, I want to ask you just one last question, and that is, your role as CMO within Ayr, and how you envision the growth and evolution of the company, and what you're focused on for, the remainder of 2022 and then the next year, 2023.
Yeah. So, I mean, really 3 of the things that were on my original strategic plan coming into Ayr, which are brand focused, right? 3 of the 4 kind of major ones. One was defining what Ayr is as a company, a corporate brand, right? What are our mission, vision, values, pillars, right? We've done that work. We've rolled it out internally. We're really proud of it. It guides kind of how we work as a company, how we work together, and how we service our communities and our patients and customers. Two was, defining the retail brand, right? And we've got, 8 or 9 different retail brands, but we're starting to normalize that experience and then convert them all to the Ayr brand. And so we've got more of that work. We'll be converting, in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania today, we have Ayr retail stores. Our stores in New Jersey in November will convert to Ayr. In early 2023, our 51 current stores, that'll be more than that by the time we get there, in Florida will all become Ayr. So that's a big change. And that in some of these states, the conversion from when we purchase the retail stores to when we're finally going to hang up the Ayr banner, to me is kind of an endpoint of a lot of work to increase the product quality, to develop product brands, to increase the service levels. And so that's really exciting. That's going on between now and next year. And then the product portfolio that we really did that brand architecture last August and September, really created these brands in Q4 last year, and then begin to deploy them really throughout the year. We really haven't fully, they're kind of a minimum viable version of where we want them to go. And, I think we just launched literally today the Haze brand in the state of Florida around some really incredible live resin, concentrate, and vape products. And that one is kind of where we want to be when we launch and develop a brand and move into 2023 with really full brand plans and campaigns and calendars, and evolve these brands like Kind, to really be, it's always the idea there has always been, it's a mission-driven, purpose-driven brand to support that, bring it to life and connect with people in that way. So to me, the opportunity from a product brand portfolio is we create, we determined the architecture we needed, we studied the consumer, we created the brands, then we aligned the products that should go with them, and we deployed them into most of our markets where they're allowed by regulatory standpoints or we have the production capabilities. So we're brand deployment, and then what's next is brand building, really brand building and creating those two-way relationships with consumers. So that's another obviously large undertaking there. And then the other piece of it is a really complete digital transformation of the way that we interact with our customers from a retail standpoint, but our consumers of our brands that are in other people's retail stores. And that's something that's been in development for a year, and we're releasing kind of iterations of it. And ultimately, it's going to manifest itself in a best-in-class e-commerce platform and integrated loyalty into an app that's on your phone that looks more like Starbucks or Marriott or American than what the typical rewards program that exists in cannabis is today. And that's something that we have that will be fully live and baked by middle of 2023. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. I would think that I could take any one of those 4 things I was just talking about, and I could probably spend 5 years at another company just focused on that. And we're doing all 4 of those things literally day by day, minute by minute. So I would say to anyone that listens that, working in cannabis and working at Ayr and in this hyper growth and, this exciting time, it's a lot of things, but you can never say it's nothing if not interesting every day.
That's right. Absolutely. And I mean, to your point, yeah, I mean, the cannabis industry is just moving at light speed compared to traditional industries out there. And so every day, like you said, is new and interesting. And I've really enjoyed this conversation, Jeff. I really appreciate your insights and all that you've shared today. There is obviously a lot going on within Ayr's umbrella, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. Is there anything that is top of mind for you or that you want to close with for the audience before we hang up here?
No, I really enjoyed the conversation as well. I always get me start talking about our brands and our processes and all that stuff, and I could talk for hours. So, no, I love the fact that that you're doing these kind of shows, and I love the fact that your audience is seeking out this kind of content and learning more. And like I said, I think everybody who has an opportunity to continue to grow the industry, change the perceptions and further normalization. I mean, I think it's awesome, and it's one of the reasons why I love meeting folks like yourself and talking on these kind of platforms. So,
Well, I appreciate it. The pleasure's all mine, and you nailed it. That's the mission of this podcast, is just to get the word out, destigmatize this plant, and let's get it moving. It's been 100 years of prohibition, so these conversations definitely help, Jeff. And I'd love to have you back on in the future, man, as things continue to evolve and Ayr continues to expand its footprint. So thanks
Awesome.
again. And where can people actually? I'll just add all the links to your social media and website so people can find that. But really appreciate it again. And thank you all for listening.
All right.
Bye.